You're very welcome back. Now, the European Drought Observatory, never heard of that before, has placed Ireland under early warning status for agricultural drought, with over 95% of the country clocking in at the second of three drought classification levels.
There you go. Here to tell us more is Dr. Jenny Lawler from the DCU Water Institute. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi,
I suppose
Jenny.
we know it's been nice weather, but when you hear drought in Ireland, it doesn't make much sense. So what's going on?
So Ireland has actually historically suffered from drought many, many times, and pretty much every summer we hear that we need to have hosepipe bans and we need to have better water conservation measures. And the reality is that although we get plenty of rainfall, Ireland is not actually that resilient when it comes to conserving our natural water resources, particularly for providing drinking water and water for agriculture. So we do have a historical issue in that regard.
Why? Why are we so vulnerable? I mean, you think of Ireland, you think of rain, you think of water.
You do, exactly. But what's required to have a sustainable, resilient water resource to tap into is to have fairly consistent rainfall throughout the year. And we've actually had lower than average rainfall over the past year, which is why we're now being placed on this early observation for drought readiness. And drought actually is defined as having 15 days consecutively of less than 0.2 millimetres of rain, and we're at that point.
But why are we so vulnerable?
Yeah, so we don't have great infrastructure, I would say, in this country. So we're reliant mainly on surface water resources for about 75% of our drinking water needs, and then also groundwater. We don't have robust monitoring systems, for example. We don't really have a good handle on how much water is being taken out of our systems for agriculture, for example. We're not monitoring, we're not metering, and we historically have a disregard for the value and the need to conserve water as domestic water users. We're one of the highest water users in Europe.
We are. Per person.
We
are one of the highest water users.
Now, some of that is down to the amount of wastage and leakage that we have from our system. So we're wasting about 38% of the treated drinking water from our leaking, ageing infrastructure.
38% leakage. It's just gone.
Some more pipes.
So they're treating this water and then it's
at
just...
great expense. To bring it to a very high quality, pumping it around and losing about 38%.
And leaking into the ground just.
And it's been talked about an awful lot that we need. It's like some of our water pipe system is over a century old and that it has to be upgraded. But again, when that was talked about a few years ago, there was talk of water charges and sure the whole country went up in arms. So when are we going to see this sorted out? Like, obviously this is a huge issue.
It's a massive issue, and the water sector, both provision of good quality drinking water and also the treatment of wastewater that's removed from our homes, is a high-tech, energy-intensive, expensive process. So obviously it does have to be paid for. And the notion of water charges, I mean, we've always paid for water through our taxation. Do you know, it comes out of one pocket or it comes out of the other pocket. And Éireann have stated categorically that they're not revisiting the idea of water charges. So that's not something that I think people need to be worried about. But the government has to pay for our water to be treated and delivered to our homes. There
was talk of the Apple tax money being used as well. I mean, Apple tax money is going to be paid for everything, by the sounds of things. Yeah. But that money might be put into water infrastructure because they're going to have to make a difference. I mean, if we're talking about the infrastructure's over 100 years old.
Yeah, I mean, it needs massive investment. We're way behind our European counterparts in terms of the investment and upgrading of the network. So that needs a massive amount of money. But it's up to the government to decide where that comes from. Éireann are obviously working very closely with the government in terms of projection and planning of what's needed. But we're way behind.
Can we talk practicalities? Because obviously there's a huge issue for farmers, first of all, right now. We'll get to that in a second. But people who are at home, Éireann, this is in the paper today, is monitoring 17 areas for water charges. And we know that, as you mentioned, we'd have the worst rainfall that we've had in average over 12 months. So the areas that are being hit the most are Donegal, Meath and Westmeath are the worst counties. If someone's watching this now, what can they do practically themselves at home that can help this situation?
Well, I would say, even though, you know, the weather is gorgeous, we all want to be in the garden, now is not the time to power wash your driveway to get it ready for the summer. Now is the time to think about how we can save water at home. So we are looking at the conservation measures. We normally call that a hose pipe ban. We shouldn't be using a hose pipe. You should be using a watering rose if you do need to water things in your garden. We need to look at where we can save water in the home. So, I mean, we've done amazingly as a country in things like waste segregation, but we've done terribly in terms of things like water conservation in the home. Like, who do you know that has a rainwater collection system in their house? You can have a simple rainwater butt that collects water from your gutters throughout the rainy times of the year, and then you have it there when you need to water your garden, for example. Yep. Or if you have a condenser tumble dryer, you can put that water into your rainwater collection system. Do you know, and you've got a couple of thousand litres of water there in quite a small and compact space that you can then use for your own needs.
What's that called? Oh, just a rainwater collector?
A rainwater butt.
A rainwater butt?
That's what it's typically called.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be big tankers. You can have a tap on the end and use
just
all
quickly,
that.
we're in islands, we're surrounded by water. Like, is desalination not something that could be done, or does that, why would they not look into that?
Honestly, Tommy, I think that's a great option, to be honest, and a lot of countries in the world are relying on it. I've been in the Middle East myself for the last 5 years, where they're entirely reliant on it, and the cost and the energy required for desalination has come down massively over the last 5 to 10 years. And we've seen the installation recently for Thames Water in the UK, where they've installed a desalination plant to make up the shortfall in what's needed for drinking water purposes. So I think it's definitely an option that should be revisited for Ireland. You know, and the environmental concerns associated with that, we've come a long way in terms of being able to mitigate for them as well.
Yeah, in relation to the brine and the chemicals that come off desalination.
Exactly.
And we'd love to hear from you this morning. Like, there's 17, monitoring 17 areas for water shortages around the country. 089 611 111. And if you're a farmer, how is that going for you at the minute? Because obviously, huge water shortages.
My kids came home with the message that if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. That's what we were told in our house over the last few days.
Good morning, everybody.
Dr. Jenny Lawler from the Water Institute at DCU. Thanks so much for that. Right, coming up next,
at the minute.
the cost of raising kids is on the rise. We're going to be discussing it after the break.